Hello and welcome to the first episode of the 2025 LARP News podcast. I've got a special guest with me this week who was with us on the 24-hour stream. Say hello.
Hello. How are you?
I'm good. This is Chris, if anybody doesn't know. We first met at Flying Lead, didn't we, Chris?
Yeah, a long time ago.
Yeah.
I think at the time you were pretending to be it always surprises me that you're taller than me, because the first time I met you, because I'm 5'8", and I think you're about 5'9" or maybe 5'10".
6 foot on the dot.
Oh, you really? Wow. Because that gives you a notion of just how crouched over Millie is when she's playing Phyllis, because I could have sworn she was shorter than me, which is amazing because that's a 4 inch plus drop. And that's quite something. That really is quite impressive.
But playing an old woman.
Yes, and I was playing.
Pain.
Yeah, I was playing an old man. So I was, playing a German doctor, and I remember there was that fantastic fight where I think Ian, as part of the description, described how my son Ptolemy did that whole kind of you better hurry up, man, we're going to get shot. You better reload faster. And we walked away from that shot, and while everybody else is arguing everything. You sort of said, "Oh, I have to get back to the town," and I was like, "Ah, very good. Yeah, I will walk you back to the town." And we ended up having a sort of old couple chat on the way back, and that's how we first met, really.
We have a lovely time RPing together.
Absolutely. So yes, I'm usually knocking around as Dr. Schmidt or at ILARP, or alternatively my rather eviler character, Killian Byrne, and being all Irish and drunk and dirty. And
he was so good, though.
He was good fun. He's good fun.
But that's not why we've got you on the podcast. We've got you here to talk about SOE Resistance,
yes.
which was they did 2 runs last year in 2024.
Yeah.
That's disgusting. Let's say last year.
I know. It was only 3 months ago. It feels like it happened 80 years ago, because it's the closest I've come to time travel. It was extraordinary. It really was. And just the whole setup and the arrangement and the detail and everything they went into led to this very interesting experience of feeling like you were there. And the odd sort of moments where you had to sort of pinch yourself. And I'm sure you get this quite a lot with film sets and things like that, where you're like, oh, this feels very the place. But it was extraordinary, because it was more like time travel than LARP in some ways. And very, very odd sensation. So yes, although it was only 4 months ago, 3-4 months ago, it feels like it was 80 years ago. And that was back in 1944.
Yeah, I was about to say, because it was the first sort of event done by Open the Box Productions, wasn't it?
That's right. As far as I'm aware, yeah, absolutely. And quite a impressive, very impressive event, in that it was 2 sessions, 3-day sessions back to back. So they had a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday session, going home Thursday morning, and we were literally having breakfast, and then we left at 10 o'clock, and the next people arrived at 12.
Oh my God.
So I don't know how
Hats
the
off
crews.
to the crew.
I know they worked so hard, and they were very, very good. I mean, it was very noticeable that the likes of from everybody from Paul to and I will forget names because I am useless at names, but Paul to Rick to Lucy to the brilliant the brilliant game runners in the round. What was really noticeable was this was a very experienced crew. So you had a lot of people who have been doing LARP for 30 or 40 years who were doing this, and also acting roles. And now I'm Facebook friends with them. You're like, oh, now, yeah, there's acting and there's this.
Yeah.
The caliber of crew was extraordinary. And that came down from the fact that you had a LARP where the very induction you had at the start was an hour long. Part of that was safeguarding and things like that, because this was very sensitive territory for a lot of the people there. I mean, it was 38 players, 20 crew, and 18 nationalities across the players. So this was a very multinational European Euro-LARP.
Oh, that's amazing. But for people who don't know, talk me through what SOE was.
Oh, yes, the history. So, Special Operations Executive, they were set up in World War II, and the thing to remember is that really the British were the inventors and the developer of the idea of special forces. Mm-hmm. So up until World War II, really, and we've also seen Rogue Heroes now and the SAS birth and all the rest of it. But really, up until that point, the idea of having behind enemy lines special forces who were disrupting, destroying logistics and things like that was unheard of. And because of that, the sight of, so for example, it was a very strange thing. So you had this thing where Winston Churchill had identified the need for commandos, because in 1940 we'd been pushed out of Europe. So we'd identified commandos, and commandos had gone on a series, basically suicide raids. But the whole idea was we didn't have the kit. We left all our artillery and machine guns and everything else in Europe when we escaped via Dunkirk. So how do we hit back? And it was a way of hitting back. And that culminated in 1944 in the development of the SOE and obviously the SAS. But there was a lot of resistance. MI6 didn't like the SOE. Because it was basically a bunch of amateurs, as they saw it, running around pretending to be spies. And this was all born of this kind of strange group of kind of Dudley Clark who largely or partly developed the concept of the SAS and was very much into counter-espionage alongside characters like Peter Fleming, Ian Fleming's brother. Just inventing these units and saying, okay, we're going to send all these people. Let's get a bunch of French people who want to fight the Germans, and rather than sticking them in an SAS group because they're not skilled, we'll get these plebs effectively. So these are just random people off the street, and we'll train them how to blow things up, shoot people, and plan attacks, and then we'll airdrop them into France and see what they can do. So it was the strangest kind of insurgents idea, and everything from there, from the CIA, which was based on OSS, which was inspired by SOE, etc., etc., etc. So the whole concept of post-war, Cold War espionage, counterintelligence, sabotage, and everything else was born of this period, and nobody else was doing it. The British were the ones who sort of led the way, and when the Americans realised what we were doing, they were the ones who actually got it. They understood the SAS. So everything from the Rangers and all the rest of it, the Rangers is a direct copy of the SAS, and the SOE and the OSS were really the starting points for the CIA and so on and so forth. So it's a strange thing, because what they called it this, was it stately owned enterprises or something like that was a nickname for it, because they took over a bunch of stately homes around the UK. And then they would sort of ram full of volunteers, and all the volunteers, they could be English, but you had to have skills, you had to have language skills, you had to be able to blend in with the local population. So ideally what you wanted Greeks to be dropped into Greece, and you want French to be dropped into France, and so on. So you had to have people who could blend into the population, with the idea that you could send them over with radio kits and other gear, and they could plan and operate sabotage missions behind enemy lines and disrupt the Nazi war machine. So that's the concept of where it came from. What it meant was,
I mean, it is no small subject matter. It's a
huge subject matter. So we're very, very lucky in that one of the people associated with the event is a wonderful writer who has written now her second book on. Specifically, she's looking at the work of women in the SOE. So she put women in France, and then she's just finished, I think it's SOE in Europe, or women in Europe. And she's appeared on famous World War II podcasts and things like that, talking about this subject. And the ability to get the depth and the detail in there, and the beauty is for a LARP, it's a perfect entryway, because it's not asking a whole bunch of players to turn up and pretend to be soldiers or pretend to be airmen, or you know what I mean, like your normal LARP. Oh, turn up and be this. It's a bit like the cowboy LARP. It's just pretend to be a person turning up in town.
Yeah, a person that's been thrown in at
Absolutely.
the deep end, right?
So you had whole backstories on characters. So what was very different from what I've experienced at ILARP, but also is a bit more like what you have at Empire, is that your character had a backstory, but in this case they would have a detailed backstory. So as part of the enrollment process, you would be gifted this backstory, and it would have your history from where you went to school to X, Y, and Z to how you got involved, lots of different things. And because of that, you had a lot of leeway. But the way they used that really cleverly was the first layer that then led on to the different layers of how you engage with other players within the LARP.
So sort of similar to how in 97 Poets, did you have interactions and relationships with other characters already written into your backstory?
So some players had characters that were that knew each other, some intimately. You know, there were a lot of coincidences on why people were there. That was the whole idea, was that, you know, you had you happened to have, I don't know, two school friends who happened to turn up together. Oh, and you know this person, type of thing, or certain things, or somebody is in the same unit as someone else who happens to have a photograph of a girl, and that girl is at the event. That kind of weird coincidences. So you had these connections, but what's worth mentioning is that it worked very differently, because you know, like at Flying Lead, you spend the first sort of the soft opening, you know, on the Friday night, basically getting to know everybody. So you're going, you know, if you're Killian or Dr. Schmidt, you spend the whole time going around gossiping with everybody, or Killian's going around doing card tricks and so on and so forth. And the difference was with this was that everybody there is very cagey, because you've all got about 4 different IDs. You've all got 4 different things, and you're not supposed to know. You can't let anybody know who you are. So that whole thing of, oh, who are you? Well, all I am is Gold 6 or Gold 7. I'm not things. So let's go back to the beginning. So during this induction, it was very much stressed. This is about immersion, so everybody has to be in character.
Yeah.
Very much looking at, okay, everybody's in character. We had 7 Germans in our group that went through this. So for some of the players, this is a deeply emotional and, you know, quite sort of impactful space. And for a lot of them, there were Swiss, Czech, Norwegians, and so on and so forth. A lot of them have family members who were involved in the war and directly in the resistance.
Wow.
So you were given this thing of saying, okay, we need to take this seriously, but you're here to have fun. But we're taking this seriously. So don't break immersion. Don't, you know, start referencing things that are outside of context. Try and stay in character, and so on and so forth. And then they gave you overalls, and you went in your normal clothes, and you dressed in your normal clothes, and we walked around the corner to a train station. And it's an abandoned train station, which looks like it fell straight out of the Railway Children. You know, it's proper brick and everything else, and the big wooden gates and things like that. And we're standing there on the station in character when you can hear them coming around the corner because the engines are loud. Comes this V8 Bentley driving around the corner. 1920s V8 Bentley drives around the corner and arrives, and following it is a Jeep and another Jeep and a truck and another truck. All aboard, everybody. We're driving you to the SOE things. We've just been picked up from the station. So from that moment, you're in it. And this is where, as I say, this is the beautiful, perfect onion, is that this is where the reenactor meets the LARPer, the actor, in that you have both deep immersion and you have the sort of attention to detail that comes with these reenactors. So they're turning up and they're in full official kit for the time, in the trucks and the Jeep. And yes, you're driving past modern vehicles and everybody's turning and looking at you and so on and so forth. But once you're in the back of that truck, you don't really know. Now, luckily the prettiest lady's got to ride in the Bentley, which was stunning, absolutely stunning. So
and it must have sounded incredible as well with the vehicle,
and just terrifying. I mean, the thing just shot off. It's the sort of thing that the original, if you read the original James Bond novels, it's the kind of Rolls-Royce sort of type of vehicle that James Bond originally drove. So just this ridiculous engine with tiny little thin wheels, no brakes, and weighs about 3 tons. You know, just a complete death machine, effectively. But by God, it was gorgeous. And they drove us to this site. Now, when we got to this site, and I kid you not, outside the site is a flagpole with the Union flag on it. All the windows are taped, as in World War II. So they've got the crisscross tape across the windows to stop them shattering if there's a bomb lands nearby. There is, as we drive across the bridge, and if you imagine the stately home, a small stately home up on your left, and as we drive across the bridge and we're looking over to our left-hand side, there's a small sort of grassy area, and in that grassy area are a series of tents laid out with German anti-tank guns and anti-aircraft guns and an armoured car and motorbikes and you know, all of the sort of Germans are there, and they're patrolling down there like they're pretending to be a German unit for our training, and then you drive up to the main site, and you arrive at the main site, and they park the cars and everybody out, and we all lined up, and they allocated our numbers to us, and we went inside, and then they had a whole signing in process, just like they would do in SOE, where you were given your name and your number. So my character name was called Peter Ernest Milton, who was a ex soldier who has experienced his evacuation from Dunkirk, who then got back into the commandos, and some other things had gone on. But everything had gone wrong, so he'd never got back to war, but he was desperate to get back to war. So the motivation for the character was very much kind of, I want to get back and stick it to the Germans, stick it to the Nazis.
Yeah.
So that was my motivation for getting back into the war. But everybody had a different layered background like this. So some were French, some were German. All the rest of the background, some were already in the resistance and so on and so forth. And of course, none of you are talking to each other about who you really are. So I had that identity. I then was also Raoul Delattre, who was that was my French cover story for my ID card. So they gave us an authentic, with original 1930 stamps on it, ID card. Everybody got one of these.
Wow.
And you had to carry that with you all the time, because at any time one of the officers could stop you and interrogate you and ask for your ID and question you over your identity and where you were born and where you are and so on and so forth. And then on top of that, they give you overalls and a patch on your arm. And my patch, I think it was gold 7. And my patch, you have a gold 7. So you're also known as gold 7. So even before you've even started to talk to anybody else, you've got 3 identities above your own identity.
Wow.
So that's 4 identities.
Yeah.
And
That's
then,
amazing.
of course, nobody can remember who's gold 6, who's gold 7, who's gold 5, who's gold 4, who's gold 2, etc., etc. So we all gave each other nicknames as well. So then you end up with 5 identities. So effectively, we're split into groups on day 1. They say, okay, there's gold team, red team, blue team, black team. In each of the groups, you have a different set of players. So as well as choosing your, or you're given this backstory, additionally, what you have a choice over is, do you want to be a specialist, an agent, or a saboteur? So a saboteur would provide, so saboteur really is the guns and bombs person. So they work with knives, guns, and bombs. And in the game sense, they're the only ones who are allowed to handle Sten guns. They were the only ones allowed to handle the Fairbanks knife. So, and importantly, and I'll get onto this, everything we do in day 2 is real world training. Outside of the fact we're not using real knives and we're not using real guns, but effectively we're using blank firing weapons and so on. So the fun bit for the saboteur was you get to work with all the explosives and the guns and the bombs and all that stuff, right? The second group is the specialists. Now the specialists go away, and what they learn is Morse code. They learn Morse code, they learn encryption and decryption, they learn lock picking, they learn 1930 style photography with real photography cameras at the time. They learn all of these little techniques, and they had a dark room. They could develop the photos, etc., etc. So this is the level of sort of skill set. This is all hard skills.
Yeah.
But I'm probably getting ahead of myself. So day one, they sort of say, okay, we're splitting you into different groups. You've got agents, and the third group is agents. Now, the agents, it sounds a bit naff. Okay, agent. No. The agents was almost the most fun, and I was an agent. And the agents was mission planning.
Okay.
So you were given all the training. We did several training sessions on how do you plan a mission? How do you plan the extraction? Airdrops. How do you receive airdrops? How do you organize airdrops? Lots of we did grenade training so we could handle grenades, and we also did silenced weapon training so we could handle silenced pistols. Now, all of these different groups were so each of these 4 units, gold, black, blue, and red, had a selection of these players in them. So 3 of each, basically, in each one unit, and then you were given missions.
Yeah.
So you're given a bit of training, and then they say, okay, now we're going to go outside, and there's a tank over there, and your job, you've got 10 minutes to work out what you want to do.
Yeah.
And then you have a 10-minute timer to try and you've got no weapons whatsoever. Here's a knapsack which we're going to pretend has got a bomb in it, and your job is to put this knapsack on the truck.
Wow.
Good luck.
Oh, so they really threw you in at the deep end at the start.
Oh yeah. So then they're like, yeah, there's 5 of you, and you've got to work out, okay, how do we distract the guards long enough and compelling enough to get the bomb on the truck.
Yeah, I guess that's kind of interesting with the different character skill sets, as you said, because it was a hard skill training environment, but with very strict. I mean, I could be saying it wrong, but sort of strict character outlines with what you can and cannot do in character.
Well, I think it was strict in some ways in the fact that absolutely, if you wanted to be the one running around with a Sten gun, you had to do the Saboteur, because then you got the training in the Sten gun. But the reality was that in a lot of things, the hardest thing was at the start was everybody's trying to lead. You know, typical LARP.
Yeah,
you know, you've got
it's that jostling for the hierarchy,
15
isn't it?
15 generals and one soldier. You know, that's the problem. The difference was they'd all done different training, but the agents, the 3 agents in our team, had done the training on how to plan a mission. So actually, the 3 of us were almost like, hang on a minute, guys. I appreciate that you've been a saboteur and you know how to blow things up and blah, blah, blah. But actually, we've had the planning. We've had the training.
Yeah.
So can we just plan this mission, please? So it was almost like you had this wrangling at the start, and then suddenly the ball dropped, and they went, oh, you've been trained in how to do this. So this isn't, you know, they were approaching it kind of like, oh, this is fun. We'll just have a go, you know, just freestyle it, see how it goes. And that
must have been quite interesting, because I guess in real life, when you were a regular civilian that then gets drafted into a government and sort of military organization, you have to get that hierarchy in place, don't you? Absolutely. And going back to how grown up and mature and sophisticated this LARP was, in the SOE, if you enlisted for the SOE back in the 1940s, if you didn't complete your training, you were sent to the cottage. Now, the cottage was a series of stately homes and places around the UK where you were basically imprisoned. Oh.
You were fed very well, but you were too dangerous to just let go.
Wow.
But for you, effectively, the war was over. So you were imprisoned not because you'd done anything wrong, but because you were too
valuable to let go.
Yeah, and too much of a risk to let go, because if you were, so for example, if you got all the way to SE, got through the SOE training, and then you failed it because you were too much of a communist sympathizer, you could be a liability. So we're going to lock you up until the end of the war. I mean, God only knows how they, you know, encourage them not to be anti-British by the end of the war, after you've lost a year and a half of your life to being locked up.
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, they fed them very well and so on and so forth. I'll come on to the food later. So that was the first day. So you were split into these groups. There's lots of other sort of mini games in the background, and moles and counterintelligence and things. But they said in the induction, one of the things they said in the induction was, this is not about conflict. So what's different about this LARP is that it's a lot about secrets. And a lot of the time you'll get to the end of a normal LARP and you think, you know, a secret kept is a secret wasted, because actually that you should use that secret for the drama, for this, for that. In this particular case, well, actually the entire reason for you being there is a secret. So what they were saying was that actually the entire approach of the thing, which I thought was brilliant, was what they said was, if you find things out about each other, what you need to do is report that to your seniors. So it basically becomes a snitching game. of people finding out about things about other people and then snitching on them and saying, well, hang on a minute, they're spending too much time with that person. So I'll give you an example. One of my teammates, who was fabulous, Glory was fabulous, and she was our team leader, and she kept sneaking away, and she kept sneaking away with this French guy, and she was French as well, and my character was very suspicious of the fact that this attractive young woman kept sneaking away with this French guy, and I'm sort of like, well, clearly she's up to some sort of espionage, she's doing something wrong. And I followed them up a corridor and caught them in a doorway, and I was like, and confronted her about it and all the rest of it. And I started basically spreading gossip about her, finding her and things, and well, she must be, there's something going on here and all the rest of it. And then she came to me and she sort of did this whole brilliant speech about the fact that actually it was her brother. And it was such a shock. Oh. And it was such a shock to see him here, and they're having trouble with their father and everything else. And by the end of the speech, in character, my character is basically going, look, Glory, I realise what it is, but actually I'm not going to vote you out even if I could do, because you're just good value having you in the team type of thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it was that kind of multi-layered sort of double-crossing. They wanted to create this feeling of ever present,
like trust no one, but know that they're your team kind
exactly.
of thing.
They were teaching you're going out in the field, you're going out to Nazi-held territory. Trust no one.
Yeah.
Trust no one. So Kate Viggers, who is the lady who wrote the SOE books, who I forgot the name of earlier. Kate Viggers was there, and she was playing a character called Mother, and she did, I think, with Steve, a phenomenal job. And there was three of them. There was a absolutely stunning Swiss lady, Kate and Steve, and they did a whole series of events where they'd sit you down and then they talked about what it was like in Europe. The level of detail. So on Saturday night, we've arrived, we've introduced each other, we've done a little bit of training exercise, it's getting dark. And then everybody comes together, we have this amazing dinner, and the food is phenomenal. So we're having not just 3 meals a day, breakfast, lunch and dinner. And when I say meals, it's sausage and mash with onion gravy. It's fish and chips. It's proper British staples, World War II-esque staples. It's sticky toffee pudding and lemon meringue pie. I mean, I think the big omission, I have highlighted this to them, but the big omission they made was they didn't have spotted dick on the menu, because that just, especially for the Europeans, that would have been just too much of a comedy gold.
I do find it so confusing that is on like one of our national puddings, and it's so poorly named.
It's just wrong on so many. It's such a public school joke, isn't it? It really is.
Yeah, it's so bad. Absolutely. But it's because government organisations and military organisations weren't subject to rationing.
No, that's right. So the food. I mean, we had tunnocks, tea cakes, and biscuits and tea and coffee with sugar and other things like that. So yes, the food was amazing, and importantly, the whole schedule for day 2 was scheduled around food. Very British.
Yeah. Oh, really?
Yeah, so you'd start in the morning, and from 8 till 9 you'd have breakfast. So you could come down at 8:30 and have your breakfast after you'd had a shower. And importantly, the only rooms in the entire building that was accessible, which was out of character, were the bathrooms. So every single room they had transformed, and there was the major's office, which looked like something out of James Bond, with a big oak table and the cabinets and all the filing and everything else. There was a bar with shutters on the windows. There was the old kitchen where they did the bomb training. All these amazingly made out rooms, which hopefully when they release the photographs you'll see, which were truly spectacular. The level of detail, to put it this way, the level of detail they went to was on the first night. So after we'd done this, and then at 9 o'clock on comes the radio show, with a radio recording of World War II, sort of, oh, and going on somehow, and it's going on, and it's telling you about the bombings in Norway, and the Norwegians are looking really traumatized, and then it's telling you about the reprisal attacks in Italy, and the Italians looking shocked, and so on and so forth. So it's really bringing it in.
So many different forms of immersion as well. That's
just this
good.
oppressive feeling of, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit. And we're all going over there in, like, this was days. We're going to be airdropped into France, and this is what's going on. The sense of immersion and the sense of kind of oppressive kind of drama, that's where the drama came from. That's where the tension came from. It wasn't kind of drama that's created from pretending to have a beef with someone or whatever it is. It was drama that was coming from the very tension of the period, which was really came out of the oak and the walls. It was just magnificent. And so we're there, and it's 9 o'clock, and we get 11 o'clock, and we're all going to bed, and the bar's been open. Everybody's had a good time. Everybody's sort of gelled and everything else, but we're still very discombobulated. So to put it into consideration, by the end of the weekend, I'll call it, although it was a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, by the end of the weekend, I probably knew well about half of the player base. So you put that into context of Flying Lead, where you know everybody, or you try to get to know everybody, you know. I knew about half of the people, because people weren't mixing in the same ways, because you had a language barrier. So some were German, and the Germans were all clustering together, and the French were all clustering together. They were really social, and they were very mixed across the groups. But you had this language barrier, you had this spy barrier, you had this suspicion barrier. You had all these different backstories which were leading people off into different directions. So the whole thing was like, it was just this layered onion of intrigue. And just so brilliant.
And do you mean, when you say that you have the Germans and the Italians and the French, do you mean that I see that they were German, Italian, or French, or OC?
Everybody who was playing a foreign national was foreign.
Okay.
So it was a proper Euro LARP. As I mentioned, 18 nationalities, 7 of them were German. I think there were about 5 French. There were Swiss, a couple of Norwegians, Czech, and so on and so forth.
Wow.
So you had this wonderful kind of smorgasbord, as you would have done in SOE at the time.
Yeah.
This smorgasbord of languages.
And did the game organisers take somebody's sort of out of character background into consideration when making their characters?
Yes. So yeah, absolutely.
Oh, wow.
So
Okay.
for example, my character was the son of a diplomat, and so I got to use both my French and my German.
Wow.
And my Japanese. So I was sort of going around and
my
liaising.
Goodness, that's insane.
Isn't it?
That's so much forethought.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah, the detail.
No wonder you were so immersed.
Rick Jackson, who managed the kind of comms before the game, would come back to you within minutes, if not the hour, in terms of interactions and the layers of detail. I mean, that's what I mean. The layers of detail on every single character. There was a plot for every single person there. And I don't want to go into too much detail, because I don't want to ruin it for anybody going forward, because they're going to be recycling a lot of these plots, and brilliantly so, because believe me, they are great fun to play. But it's not like you're in a preset setup. Everybody has jeopardy. Put it this way, every character has jeopardy. Every character was compromised in some way. And that's what made it brilliant, because everybody had secrets to hide as well as stories to tell. And that was so clever, because you spent the whole time wondering how much you could say, how much you could invent, how much would my character know about what was happening in the war? Now my character, because I'm a huge World War II boffin, but also because I was playing the son of a diplomat, I knew that I would know far more than the average person, because I'm running in those kind of upper middle class circles of the higher echelons of society. But what would I say? I'd be dropping tidbits. Oh yeah, no, I know about that. Yes, absolutely. You know, and I was very much playing the gruff soldier. So we get to day 2, and you have breakfast. And what do I mean by the day being divided by food? Well, basically, you started off with breakfast 8 till 9. You then do training for an hour and a half. You then have second breakfast or morning tea. which is literally
11s
tea and biscuits. You would then go on to lunch, and you would have a full lunch of deliciousness, usually something like sausage and mash or something like that. You would then have afternoon tea, which could be something like a scone and cup of tea, and they served, because it's the site is in Devon, so you had the whole conversation with the Europeans about whether you put the jam on the cream or the cream on the jam, and they thought that was brilliant. And then you go into the afternoon, you have another further training session, and then in the afternoon you have dinner, and then that's it, you're off for the afternoon. So
amazing.
You had the whole day was divided up by 5 meals. I mean, it was just, I mean, it's like second breakfast's best idea ever. I mean, it's that thing of like literally the whole day is divided up into meals, and the Europeans, bless them, the Germans just went mad for the sausage, bangers and mash with onion gravy. The Germans just went absolutely wild for, because it was also it was not cheap sausages. The quality of the cooking was phenomenal. Really was very, very good. They worked so hard. And
you're making me hungry. Anyway, we'll skirt over the quality because I'm so hungry now.
This is it. It's that whole thing of like, because this is a lot more expensive than a standard LARP. So this is a European scale LARP. So the ticket price was £500. I think that was very good value at £500, because
from the sounds of it, with the vehicles alone,
vehicles. The fact that you're in a hotel for 3 nights, you're not having to camp in a field like your standard LARP. You're not having to camp in a field. You're in a hotel for 3 nights, and they're feeding you 5 times a day, and then having immersion at midnight with the air raid as well. I mean, it is a lot of money, but it does sound very reasonable if you break it all down. And you literally all you had to do was turn up with a set of World War II clothes. All you need is World War II wardrobe, which is dead easy, because any charity shop has anything that you could get away with in terms of World War II. I mean, depends on how authentic you want to be. But everything from the overalls they gave you, to the shoulder badge, to the notebooks, to the machine guns, the grenades, everything else was provided for. It was reenactment.
Wow.
Reenactment stuff. So blank firing Sten guns, MP40s, Mausers. They had an MG42 and a Piat in the training room. They've got all the bomb building equipment, all of that stuff. So day 2 divided up by meals. Won't mention that again. Meals.
And what was the training that you had?
It was all hard skill training. So it was all hard skill training. So this wasn't you have a skill, go down there and And I love the whole play style of like you're a trapper and you go and put it by this and you put your trap here and then you come back later and there's a fur by your trap and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
But everything in this was basically trying to replicate as closely as possible the training that you would do in SOE. So we had John, who was playing an American sergeant, and afterwards I shared a poll of like, was he English with a really good American accent or American who's been in England too long? It was quite hard to tell. He was very, very good, and he was an American sergeant who did the whole training on explosives. So for the agents, for the saboteurs, he trained them in blowing up railway tracks and how to use compression detonators on a railway track and set them the right way around so that they're not cut off, so they work correctly, so that you tie it onto this, you do this, and this is how you strap the bomb on the inside, and therefore that's why all the detail in there. Oh, by the way, can you do that now? And then they would be training that. For the agents, we were trained on how to set up tripwires, how to set up booby traps. So we were using the same explosives, the same det cords, and it had the green det cord, which was a timed explosive, and every yard was 3 minutes, and so on and so forth, or 30 seconds. I can't remember exactly how. John will tell me off. And then the red one was immediate, so that was instantaneous.
Yeah.
So you use the instantaneous cord, and then they would give you the cord, and you cut it off to length, and you tie it into the det cord. Now the units that you were using for activating the det cord were actual replicas of World War II units, where they were spring-loaded. They were bloody dangerous to load. It was literally like, because it has a live cap in there.
Yeah.
So in the original, it would be a cap which would fire the det cord, which would blow up the bomb, the TNT, the plastic explosive. But in this particular case, the cap's in there, but the det cord is fake and the bomb's fake, because obviously it's training.
Yeah.
But the cap still makes a very big bang for an inside environment. So when these traps went off or didn't go off, crikey, everybody jumped.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the thing. So it was, how do you set up a trap? How do you set up a bomb? So it was all practical training. I was trained in how to receive an airdrop or a landing aircraft in France. So we started off in a map room looking at the range of different aircraft and where they could reach in France.
Oh my goodness.
And then you went out and how do I measure this? And why do we measure it in feet, height and meters on the ground and this, that and the other? And everybody's asking, and all the Europeans are very confused about the fact that it's feet and miles and yards. And
rather than meters and kilometers.
Absolutely. And, you know, so there's all this kind of detail that's going in there. So, you know, meanwhile, the specialists are learning how to pick locks and how to do full-on encryption and decryption using 3 or 4 stage decryption and encryption techniques, including chess sets and
oh my goodness,
key codes. Oh no, proper stuff. This was genuinely hard. Genuinely hard.
Because that it both terrifies me but also excites me, because my particular kind of neurospice is that I love learning about things, but I need somebody to teach, like to show me how it's done the first time, help me through it, and then do that. So like when you're at LARP and you have the decryption and the encrypted messages that you have to like decode and things, I cannot do that because I've never learned how to do it. So having that kind of training exercise actually sounds both terrifying but also exciting to me, because that's a hard skill that I really want to develop. That's so cool.
Well, put it this way: my Christmas present for myself this year was a lockpicking. With a learning to lockpick, because that's fascinating.
And I guess as well, because if you were struggling in the training sessions, that would also increase your immersion, because you knew that if you didn't succeed, you know, you wouldn't be any use to your country, to the war effort. You would also potentially be imprisoned, in hyphenated commas. God, that must have been so cool.
Absolutely. You had to pass. And so you're doing all this training and it's literally like, okay, we're going to get out there. I mean, the saboteurs got to have a bit of fun because they basically went to a field for, I think it was an hour and a half, and basically shot MP40s, Sten guns, Mausers, you name it. And they were like firing off so much ammunition. Everybody else was like, when do we get to go?
That's so cool.
So that was very cool. So yes, very, very jealous with that one. But they also did hand-to-hand combat with a Fairbanks knife.
Wow.
So that whole sort of World War II, you know, grab them around the neck and stab them in the chest type of, you know, all that sort of thing. This is how you assassinate people and stuff. So that was what the saboteurs were doing. So they were setting up bombs, blowing up railway tracks, doing close combat, stealth. They were talking about how to use stealth, how to walk across gravel, and simple details. Wow. Brilliant training. And meanwhile, we as agents were learning about airdrops. We were doing grenades.
That's so cool.
And silenced pistols and how to handle, you know, and mission planning, which was a huge part of the agent's role. So you did a whole day of training. So by the end of the second day, you were having dinner and you're chatting to everybody and in character, but your brain is just, you have a notebook and a brain. And I still have my notebook full of how to do all this stuff.
Yeah.
You know, how to, you know, how to plan a mission, when to evacuate, when to get out, how long you should leave it, you know, and things like that. And then they took you aside and they did this brilliant episode where they took everybody aside, different groups and different things, and they gave you like a moral conversation. And they went, right, we're going to talk to you about the morals of warfare and so on and so forth. And the questions that they asked were really clever.
Yeah.
And they were all based on World War II kind of precepts. But it was things like, you're going to assassinate an officer, a Gestapo officer on a bridge or whatever it is, and you've got to stop the car. And then just as you're going to set off the bomb, a child runs out into the road. What do you do? And it really intrigued me because in character I was playing a gruff general, but, you know, in that sort of general, I was a gruff soldier, but in that role I was kind of like, well, my job is to say, no, you just blow the bloody child up. Because that, you know, luck of the draw, really sorry about this, but casualty of war. And the number of people who balked at it.
Yeah.
The number of, the women who were like, no, I wouldn't scare the child. And it's like, no, you've just blown the mission.
Yeah, it was that wartime mentality of do you let your humanity and your morals disrupt the mission and potentially risk hundreds, if not thousands, of lives?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Wow.
You know, it's the greater good. You know, it's that whole thing of like, do you kill one person to save 1,000? You know, and that's the whole thing. So and it was really interesting also kind of in that conversation, because what it really pulled out was that some people who were there were very much still, they were playing a World War II sort of character, but their morals were still very much tied to the 21st century. And so they were very still much in the thing of like, oh yes, but if I just, you know, if we have to leave a man behind, we'll give him a pistol and a medipack to make sure he survives.
Yeah.
So, no, because he's going to get captured.
Yeah.
And if he gets captured, he's going to speak, he's going to talk.
Yeah.
So, you know, you make the hard choice.
Yeah.
You put him out of his misery and you move on. You know, if he can't make the evac, sorry, mate.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. You're gone.
You know, so it's that kind of like, and that again leads to this kind of oppressive, again, another radio announcement at 9:00 that evening, where everybody tuned into the radio in the common room. Another sort of thing, this oppressive kind of feeling of we're about to be dropped into France or Germany or Switzerland or Poland. We're going to be dropped. And then you get to the third day, and the third day is a full day of assessment.
Oh wow! So you
everything you learnt on the second day, you're going to be assessed on your third day, and this is pass fail. This is your examiner is walking around with you, and all the examiners, it was like Rick and Steve and Josh and so on and so on, and all of them were like the leaders of the group, and they're all walking around with clipboards going, nope, yes, no, and everybody's being graded throughout this sort of thing, both for your learning and for your assessments. So suddenly it's like, oh my goodness, this is on, and the assessments were so clever. The hardest thing for me is to explain what we were doing without ruining it for anybody in future, because they were so clever, and the way that they used the grounds and the building to kind of bring people together, but also take you apart. So you were literally coming into the building from 5 different directions to do 5 different missions, and they compartmentalized the whole building in such a way that the missions didn't cross each other.
My God.
It was so clever.
Yeah.
And we thought they were going to run, we'll do one big mission and one small mission and that'll be it. No. We did 6 missions, large and small, throughout the day.
Oh my goodness.
So and importantly, all the missions were interconnected.
Okay.
So if you failed in the first one, you wouldn't have all the gear for the second one.
Oh no! Oh my God, that's incredible.
And with every team, you then had to choose who went on the first mission and who went on the second mission.
Wow. Okay.
And the first mission might be an infiltration, sabotage mission, or you've got to pick this lock, you've got to break into this room, you've got to photograph this information, and you have to get out without anybody seeing you.
Wow.
Yeah, or you've got to go into a bar like LOLO, go into a bar but creepy LOLO, and talk to the barman who's got some code words that you've got to exchange, or you've got to meet with an agent and your code. There's a special code word that you have to indicate to the agent to let them know that they're there, or they let you know they're there. Oh, by the way, there's also Gestapo in there as well. And they're looking for resistance. So they will be interrogating people and so on and so forth. And you also have to talk to so-and-so about where this Gestapo general might be, etc., etc. And if you fulfill that, then the second group go to get to assassinate the Gestapo general.
Wow, okay.
So I was in the first one. I don't know what happened in there. But in the second one, I can tell you what happened. Somebody handed me the pistol because I was the only agent. There's 2 agents and one of the Germans who was the other agent.
And the agents could handle silenced weapons.
Silenced weapons, yeah. So they turned to me and they said, "You take this," because the other agent who was with us, the German, she's from a family of pacifists, and or they're from a family of pacifists, and they weren't comfortable shooting people, even with a fake weapon.
Wow.
So there I am, walking around the edge of a stately home, pistol in hand, doing my best impression of Where Eagles Dare, so and so, and in my mind's eye, I look remarkably like Richard, what's his name, or Clint Eastwood. But I went round the corner and killed the first guard, and then came to the edge of the building, and then we're trying to see, is the second guard down the garden? Is there 3 guards? We don't know. We're looking down the garden. Is he down the garden, or is he round the other side of the stately home? And bless him, Flowers, who was nicknamed Flowers because he bet anything, he rolled out across the grass in his green overalls with his green hat on, pulled down low, and then lay on the grass, absolutely still, and then gave hand signals to me to go when the guard, like, hold, no, the guard's right there, and I'm like, right, okay, and then he goes, go, 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 and I'm like, you sure? Yes, go, and I sort of skip down 2 steps, skip over the gravel onto the grass, step about 15 feet away from the guard, and go, and he turns around, and he goes down. And then we go to the doors, and I'm trying to look through the windows, and I can't see anything because it's dark inside, it's light outside. And we go through the door, and as I'm opening, we've got the one of the specialists is with us, neutrals with us, and she's going to try and pick the lock if there's a lock to be picked.
Yeah.
There isn't. The door's open. I open the door and I go through with the pistol sort of up high next to my face, going right round the corner with my elbows up, and right inside the door on the left-hand side is Paul dressed in German uniform, and I just go thunk, thunk, shoot him twice, and as I go around the corner, there's this beautiful Swiss woman who looked like Eva Green. I mean, she looked absolutely stunning.
Yeah.
Most incredible. I mean, 1940s makeup is
insane, isn't it? It's
if
so
you can
good.
pull it off, it is insane. And she looked amazing, and she's sitting there with a martini in her hands, and all I saw was a sort of outline of a figure, and my finger just went poof and shot her, and she went, "Oh well, really?" I'm told salaciously that on one of the other units they'd switch it up every time and be sitting in different seats. And at one point, one unit came through the doors to find her wearing her negligee.
Oh wow!
And an MP40 in her hands.
Oh yeah. That's my kind of woman.
So full on. Absolutely. No, she was kick-ass. She was very kick-ass.
That's amazing. And I guess it's kind of cool because you've got that element of, it's a training exercise, it's an assessment.
Yeah. Nobody dies.
Yeah, nobody in character is dead, but that's so cool.
So this is what I mean by being the perfect onion. All this layering, and at the core of it, everybody gets up again because it's a training exercise. You're shooting Tommies pretending to be Germans. You're shooting Tommies pretending to be Nazis. They're not really Nazis.
And that must have been really good because the most immersion breaking experience that I have at LARP is when you're returning from an encounter or a thing, because you've got to do that travel. You've got to walk from one site to another, and then when you're on the way back, yes, people do RP, but a lot of the time they're just chatting and having a nice time. But having that whole assessment thing means that you finish the exercise and then you're still in character because it was an assessment. It was an exam. That's so cool.
Absolutely. So let me give you the best example I've got, which is that we did so. The last assessment we did, which was brilliant for our last assessment, it really was perfect, was we had to take out a German convoy. And when I say convoy, I mean a 223 armoured car, radio car, and which was leading this Bentley, this stunning Bentley. Nice. And the Bentley had an officer sitting in the back seat with his wife or mistress or whatever it was. So there's a lady sitting in the back seat, I think it was Kate, in the back seat, with things, and then the chauffeur driving the car, and then the armored car up front. And to set this up, stage one, there was a whole thing with a sneaking past so you had documentation beforehand. So this is worth saying, you got documentation beforehand for different missions, but you didn't get all the missions.
Okay.
So you got half the mission. So we knew about this beforehand. We knew we're going to have to do this. We're going to have to get past the checkpost. Somebody's going to have to distract the soldier to get past the checkpost to do the, who are you, ID card, blah, 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 talkie, getting through the checkpost, while somebody else goes through the bushes with all the gear.
Okay.
You're going to have to do that. And however many people we throw at the first mission, we're going to lose from the second mission. And the second mission is going to be ambushing a car with Sten guns and machine guns and pistols and a bomb. So we're going to need somebody to set up the bomb. We're going to need somebody to set up the thing. Where are we going to do the ambush points for the machine guns, etc., etc. So we completed the first one, and 3 of our team members completed the first one. We have 5 members or 4 members for the second one, 5 members for the second one, and we got through half the kit we were expecting.
Wow.
So we got like 2 Fairbanks knives and 2 Sten guns. We only had 1 person who could fire Sten guns.
Okay.
So I ended up going up to Rick and saying, as you know, sir, I've got a military background. I know how to fire one of these things, blah, blah, blah. And I did actually know how to fire one of these things. I'd done the training with Steve, so I fired them before. And I was like, oh, you know, doing the whole... And he went, are you sure? And I went, yes, absolutely fine. And then I ran over to Flowers, who was hiding in the bushes where I'd instructed him to be his ambush spot. And he picked himself the best of the 2 Sten guns and two full mags of ammunition. And he was in the ambush spot, and his job was to lay down heavy fire, and then my job was to take out the armored car, and the Germans were in charge of setting the bomb. So the Germans set the bomb off, and the pyro guys here were brilliant. The way they set the bomb off was it was all smoke bombs and everything else. There's a bang, so there's a crack, and then there was smoke bombs and everything plowing out the front of the thing. So you're there, and you're hiding under a gun or a bush, big gun or a leaf, in September, sweating because you've been running around instructing people where they're going to be, who's going to be doing what. You're trusting the Germans have done their job, the bomb's set up correctly, everything's going to go off. And then you're hiding under a gunning bush, holding a Sten gun that you haven't fired in years, and you've just gone through the instructions from Flowers on how to clear a jam, and remembering how to take the magazine out. Yeah. And you're about to charge out on an armoured car. How immersive is that in terms of...
That's insane.
I was sitting there going, this is the closest I will ever be to the sensation of excitement and fear that those people would have been. And they would have been a hell of a lot more scared. And I was scared of failing the exam.
Yeah.
So we get there, the bomb goes off, stops the armoured car on the bridge. Flowers pops up from behind in the bushes and just lets loose with his Sten gun. He's literally holding the trigger down and it's emptying a whole magazine. He empties a whole magazine. So as I come out from under my gunner bush, Kate and Paul and all the people who are in the Bentley are all juttering around pretending they're being shot to death, and collapsing dead. So it looks like it's straight out of, Where Eagles Dare or SAS Rogue Heroes. And I run over towards the armoured car, and a soldier comes out of the top of the armoured car with a Mauser pistol and starts taking pot shots at me, and I'm taking pot shots at him, and then I take the aim and take him down, and I've taken 2 shots, and then somebody comes out from the side door, and I go to shoot him, and the gun jams.
Oh no!
And unbeknownst to me, Flowers, who knew the Sten guns, knew that one of them jammed and which one of them didn't, and he took the one that didn't.
Flowers.
So I ran to the other side of the armoured car and start trying to clear the jam. And there's a brilliant photograph of me desperately trying to clear the jam on the Sten gun, and this German soldier having climbed out of the armoured car driving seat, walking around with a Mauser pistol ready to shoot me. And he came around the corner, and literally up ahead of me is the hall. Yeah. And all of the rest of my team, who aren't part of this unit, who did the first mission, are there going, he's there, oh my God, he's there. And I'm like panicking, and I'm clearing the jam, and I bring the gun up just as he comes around the corner, and he's got the gun on me.
Oh God.
And he goes to fire, and his gun jams as well. So then he's trying to clear his jam. I cleared mine, brought it up, and he went, well, you might as well shoot me then. And I just go, bang, loudest crack in the world.
Wow.
My ears are ringing, and he falls down dead, in inverted commas.
Yeah.
But the beauty is then, all the Tommies get back up again, and they're like, well, that was really good, mate. Yeah, you did a good job then. And they're doing the whole sort of like, well done, sir, well done. That was good.
Yeah.
All of the crew were fantastic. You called the officers sir, you called the staff.
Yeah.
They corrected you every time you got it wrong. It was just, the detail was phenomenal. Yeah. Absolutely phenomenal.
I mean, that's incredible, because it means that you get to have those kind of like action hero moments, but because it's recent. I mean, I think World War II is still classed as recent history, isn't it? So you have that real, very emotional sort of attachment to the real world events. That's incredible, because you mentioned SAS Rogue Heroes. There's also there's that weird motif recently where we kind of romanticize the war a little bit. So sort of Ministry of Ungentle Warfare, SES Rogue Heroes. You've got loads and loads of things that in action films and in a lot of modern day media, it's all sort of centered on the action side of things. So not so much the emotional side, but having that kind of immersion with the LARP and having those moral questions and all of the training, that must have really sort of put it at a whole new...
It was really impactful. Absolutely. It brought it home, and you felt really privileged to experience a reenactment of the training they did in a similar sort of site. I don't know whether that particular site was an SOE site, but it could have very well been.
Yeah, I mean, it's a beautiful country house.
It is absolutely stunning. You were staying overnight, and I was sharing a room with a Mauritian and a Norwegian.
Yeah.
Who, by the way, snored like an absolute tank. Oh my God. Every morning, I set my alarm clock in the morning to wake us up, and I set it to Glenn Miller, so it came on with all that in the morning. You didn't want to break the spell, and nobody wanted to break the spell. So you got to the end of the assessments, and they'd done all the assessments, and I could tell you so many more stories of like individually stalking through the house to kill the general, knocking on the door and him answering the door and shooting him dead, or whatever, just genuinely mission after mission, story after story. Brilliantly well crafted, well thought through, challenging but not ridiculous, but sometimes ridiculous. I mean, trying to cover for 3 specialists who are trying to decode Morse code and decrypt a whole message with 4 layers of decryption, whilst soldier after soldier comes through the area and you have to explain why you're here.
Oh my goodness.
Oh my God. It was brilliant. It was, I pretended to be an old Frenchman who'd lost his glasses. It worked really well. I was just so annoying they didn't even ask for my ID card. They were like, no, I want to get away from you. You're just going to talk at me for hours. It's horrible.
I mean, it's a way of getting past.
It is.
It's a way of getting past the enemy.
Old people power. Old people power. That's the way forward.
Exactly.
Absolutely, Phyllis. And so you did all these different assessments, so many assessments, and it was so rich. And you're eating lunch, you're eating dinner, you're having fish and chips on the Friday night. You know, that was the end of the thing. You have fish and chips, everybody's noshing down on fishy chips with mushy peas. And, you know, very few of the Europeans ate the mushy peas.
On outward appearance, they're not the most appealing of things.
They're not the most appealing. Why are we eating these? I don't understand. This is just horrible. What was, when we talk about the impact, you know, you're looking at a thing where you have to me, the way I translated it afterwards was to say this was national historical trauma therapy.
Yeah.
Because they had a dedicated person I mentioned the cottages earlier, the cottage where you were sent to prison. They had a cottage behind the house, which they had Lucian, who was the partner of Paul, I think it's Paul's partner, who's not into LARP, but she's lovely, really, really lovely lady. And you could go there if you were struggling. You could go there and have a time out with her.
Wow! So you had that like out of character little welfare area.
Tea and biscuits, welfare area, all the rest of it. One of the people in my team needed that. I think great-grandfather was involved in the Warsaw Uprising, and she still has all of his papers. One of the Germans in my group, their father, and I don't want to, because this is the problem is, I don't know what gender anybody used in the game, because people might be a different gender, but the problem was it was 1940s, so there was no they. There was just she and he, so it was a bit confusing. But they have a family history where I think their great grandfather was at Stalingrad and survived.
Wow.
So this is incredibly intimate. Very, very traumatic. There was a number of French individuals who came who had direct family members who were involved in the resistance and so on and so forth. So this was very intimate to a lot of people. And it was a way of this kind of national historical trauma therapy of like working their way through in a safe space. And I remember on the third day, On the third day, the attention to detail was such that the Union flag came down and the swastika went up, the German flags and everything else. Oh yeah, no, it turned from the whole atmosphere changed. It was, and we were standing just about to do the mission where we assassinated the Gestapo leader, and I'm standing there and I can see all three Germans in our team are looking really nervous and like they're sweating and troubled. And I said, "Are you okay?" And they said to me, they said, "No, I'm feeling very uncomfortable about that flag being up there."
Yeah.
That is really like it's not allowed in Germany. It's illegal.
Yeah.
I feel so uncomfortable, and I said, "Look, I completely understand. It's not forbidden here, and this is a safe space for you to push into." And part of their motivation for coming was specifically what's happening with the AfD in Deutschland, specifically what's happening with politics right now with Ukraine and everything else, and all the changes that are occurring in the world, was to come from a pacifist background of saying, actually, do I need to join the army? Do I need to get involved? Do I need to be aware of what I'm comfortable with? And coming to SOE was part of that journey in terms of understanding both their history and the history of those people who resisted against the Nazis, because there were German SOE agents. I mean, how terrifying is that, being in Nazi Germany at the fall of Nazi Germany and working for the SOE? I mean, just wow.
Especially knowing that at any time you could be discovered and your family would be at risk. That must have been horrible.
Utterly terrifying.
It's really interesting because it must have been fascinating learning about how different nationalities dealt with the aftermath of World War II, because in Britain, and I'm sure in other places of the world as well, but people would come home and they just wouldn't talk about it. Like my grandfather on my father's side was in D-Day. He went ashore with the Black Watch. He was a medical officer. My great aunt was at Bletchley. She was a linguistic specialist. So learned French, German, English, and Spanish and Italian. And she didn't talk about what she did during the war, because it's that very British mentality of we just did what we had to do.
To be fair, also Bletchley Park, they had to sign the Official Secrets Act, so they couldn't talk about what they did after the war. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, my wife's grandfather, he was at Bletchley and then GCHQ, and he was working on Colossus, so he was on the computer side of the breaking Enigma code. And my grandfather was he was a navigator in Wellington bombers. He was shot down in the 1940s, and he spent 5 years in Stalag Luft, where the Great Escape happened.
Goodness.
Came back a skeleton. So
it's so difficult, because as we said, it's recent history, and for some people, we're at that precipice where, unfortunately, as is the nature of age, a lot of the people that survived World War II are coming to the end of their lives now, and soon we won't have very many people who were alive during the war at all. Absolutely. And this LARP must have been just so timely. Incredibly, timely. Very important, but also just very cathartic, because it's that ingrained national sort of, we don't talk about what happened in World War II, because you can't. Wow, I'm just amazed.
So the denouement of that was I'll tell you about a fun thing that they did. Well, when I say fun, when is torture fun?
Okay. So I'm intrigued.
If your game is going a little slow and you feel that you're not getting the action you should do, and you're not interacting with enough people, other players, there's a risk that your character, because before you went to this LARP, as well as filling in some details about yourself, you also have to fill in a disclaimer about what level of torture you're comfortable with.
Okay.
And at any point, you can be picked up, bagged over your head, taken down to the basement, and then tortured. Now, that might be just a interrogation by Anders, who is the Norwegian officer pretending to be a German officer, and Mother. That might be a full-on interrogation, including torture or pretend torture, where they're snapping your fingers. I heard of, Paul told me the best one that they did, or Steve, sorry, told me the best one they did. I can't repeat it to you because it's so clever and I don't want to ruin it for anybody.
Yeah.
But it would absolutely freak me the hell out. And the person who went through it on my team, who went through that, came back and did one assessment and didn't do well, wobbled on the assessment, and then went and sat in the cottage for a while, but still was amazing. And they said she was the bravest person because the guy who went through it before her was screaming his head off.
Wow.
So
but also again, a very real risk that people had to prepare for.
Absolutely. And her great grandfather was the one involved in the Warsaw Uprising. So this was very real, very real.
Yeah.
And, comforting her in character and pointing out things and so on and so forth. Just brilliant. So this is what happens. So if your games are being a bit slow, you get bagged and tortured for a little while and come back in an hour or two, and you might be the same as you were before.
Back into it.
Yep, absolutely. Good luck.
Wow.
So there's that. So we got to the end of the assessment, and we'd all had interviews with the major. A lot of us had interviews with the major, and he sort of takes you to one side, and you sit in his office, and he pulls out a file on you with your photo, tagged to the top of it, and a full file on with all the information which everybody else has been snitching on you about, and so on and so forth. And this is all going on.
Yeah.
And we basically all pass because that's fine, Yay, good, everybody passes. But then they give us 45 minutes to kind of socialise.
Yeah.
And everybody's pretending to run off to rooms together and things like that. And I don't, because I'm having too much bleed and it's all a little bit much. And anyway, then they say a guy comes through dressed in like a creepy trench coat and fedora, and says, and everybody, all the military officers are deferring to him, and he says, "Right, you lot, follow me," and we all follow Guy through to the kitchen, and they've turned the old kitchen, which is the bomb making room, into a small cinema, and we watch a film, and they put together a 20-minute film that went through with actual photographs and video of the SOE at the time doing training and the operations that they did out in Europe. Much of the photographs obviously taken again after the war as documentation of what they were doing. And we're watching this video, and by the time the lights come back up, there's barely a dryer in the house.
Oh, wow.
I think it's Rijka. She's from Holland. She is a volunteer. She works at the Dutch SOE museum, which, just to put it into context, the Dutch underground was completely undermined and wrapped up by the Gestapo. The whole lot of them were captured and tortured and killed.
Wow.
So it's a very traumatic event for the Dutch. And at the end of the war, the Dutch were, as well as us being hit by V2 rockets, the Dutch were also being hit by V2 rockets as well. So she stood up and did this amazing off-the-cuff speech, which literally then had everybody in floods of tears.
Oh.
It was so impactful and so I just feel it is the best thing outside of the birth of my children and getting married. It's the best thing I've ever done. It really is.
It must have been so just inspirational to learn about other people's stories as well. Wow.
Absolutely. And talking to them afterwards and on the Facebook group and hearing the backstories of their families and understanding the intimacy of the conversations that you're having and what that means, and the kind of, it's this amazing, I mean, what a choice of material to explore. That whole kind of smorgasbord of internationals coming together to try and defeat a common foe, that the idea of all the onion layers, it's just so perfect. It's just so perfect. And my greatest regret is anybody else knows about it, because it will come round again. We're watching this space very, very closely, and it's incredibly exciting. And and I'd say if you have the money to go, and to put it into context, compared to say Empire or Flying Lead, there is no upfront cost beyond getting a few charity shop clothes and maybe a dodgy old suitcase. That's it. So you're talking about total cost for going for 50 quid. You don't have to buy any LARP weapons. You don't have to buy any firearms. You don't have to buy any of the kit that you have to get for Flying Lead or for, Empire or whatever.
Because I guess once you tot up food costs, fuel, petrol, getting their kit, my Empire kit cost me at least, £500, £600.
Yeah.
So that's it all adds up. And I guess it all depends. I mean, LARP is unfortunately a very expensive hobby. We've got like looking at the tickets that were available for our raffle, that each one of those tickets was at least 85 plus pounds, and Menace is £100, Empire is 85. It all gets it. And then player events now, for certain Empire player events are £100 plus pounds to go to.
I used to, when I used to turn up, I used to rock up to Flying Lead, and by the time I bought 3 tickets, because Rafty didn't need a ticket, so by the time I bought 2 tickets for my kids and myself, and then purchased food tickets for all of us, that's 450 quid.
Yeah, I think you have to also weigh up what you get out of it, and by the sounds of it, this LARP is an incredibly impactful and just incredible.
It's life changing.
Yeah.
If you let it, it's life changing, and I would put it up there with the likes of Legion and others that Dave's been on and Matthew's been on, because it was Matthew who recommended me to, and I owe him a huge debt for recommending it to me, because
I have so much respect for Matthew. He's a wonderful individual, and he goes on LARPs. He went to the Sahara Desert.
Yeah. He's doing a Das Boot LARP in the new year. I think he's going next month or so. But he's got disposable income I haven't got, because he doesn't have children like I've got. But dropping this.
But it is amazing.
Just the I think for him, he was saying that the big game changer for him was when he did the one which was the Reichskinder. Yeah. And he said that doing that, where you were playing what's it called? Children of the Reich, who've been indoctrinated into the Third Reich methodology, being deprogrammed by Soviets after the war. He said it just blew his mind. The drama, the kind of the depth, the kind of the psychology, the history, the whole thing is on another level. And I think that SOE it's so much more accessible and so much more available in terms of the material that it's doing, but by God, the immersion is near perfect. I mean, to the point where they were the showrunners were apologizing because there were people that actually lived around the stately home who owned cars which were out of period, and it's like, what are you apologizing for? That's not the thing. And it was as near as damn perfect, and I take my hats off to them. I don't know how they got through the 2 sessions they did.
2 runs back to back,
2 runs back to back. I mean, I know how I've crewed at ILARP for a weekend. I know how exhausting it is. So it was a full-on thing. The way that they prepped that, building the gardens everywhere, the vehicles, the ambition, the firearms. It was a piece of work.
It just sounds amazing, and I've spoken to a couple of the game orgs, and I know that they're hoping to run it again this year, if not year after. And I hope, I really hope that they can, because I again, it's something that we've spoken about a lot. Is I really want to go to these sort of high intensity LARPs where you can discover a part of yourself that you didn't know was there. With a lot of the hard skills and just the emotional side of it. Do you, on a slightly more sort of fun note, you were talking about how you were trained to walk across gravel pathways quieter.
Yes.
Do you find that now when you go and you see a gravel path, you sort of go back into that training mindset?
A little bit, yeah. No, the funniest thing about it is, like, you kind of weigh up, the in and out. So you're it's funny. The bleed from this was massive. Yeah. So you wanted to tell everybody about it because it was amazing, but also you for weeks afterwards you just wanted to be back in 1944. You wanted to have that clarity of purpose, that sort of straightforward kind of, we're on a mission, I'm doing this thing, this is what I'm here to do, this is what I'm here to learn. The absorption, I mean, just having 3 days where you literally don't have a mobile phone and you're learning constantly. Must have been. I mean, it's hard enough for me being 46, nearly 47, maybe 48, I can't remember. But it's hard enough for me, and I grew up without that stuff, with notebooks and other things like that. But for the people who've grown up since, 2000s with nothing but mobile phones, it must have been a real shock to the system.
Yeah.
And thinking, I'm going to be bored. No, you're bloody well not. You're going to be busy. You know what I mean? And that was really intense. it was a very, 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 very enjoyable. I mean, it was lovely as a kind of, I refer to myself as a bit of an EU orphan. That part of just being surrounded by people from everywhere around Europe was just a lovely part of it as well. It was very touching and really, really sweet, and felt, you felt very nostalgic. But also in the context of World War II, it brought out the best of British, which I think was something that a lot of the people who'd gone there wanted to see as well. And I thought that was a really endearing quality about it. It was very much stiff upper lip, jolly hockey sticks. Let's band together and get the job done, and not in a cruel way. It wasn't sort of saying, buck up, Chuck, carry on and all this sort of thing, but in a way of going, yes, I get you, I understand what you're going through, but we, come on, there's a war on, we've got to get this done, sort of way. And that was very interesting to explore that kind of sense of oppression, that sense. They did that so well. They did it so well. When you had members of your own unit coming back tortured and traumatized from torture, but in a really psychological way of going, oh my God. And then, you're being tortured, but none of it's real. But you can suspend disbelief enough to be like, wow. And that's very sobering. But God, it was fun. It was so much fun.
Yeah.
So
funny.
And
to be, and in terms of research in the real world now, there's a lot of resources available to us. Like we've got, as you said, you've got Kate Figgers, who's written Mission France, about the women of the SOE, and
Mission Europe that's coming out. Yeah,
Mission Europe coming out in May. You've got one resource that I would recommend is Ben McIntyre.
I love
he's
Ben
an
McIntyre.
He's an excellent writer, and I was lucky to work on a couple of his shows. But he is the incredible historian that has written the books of. He wrote SAS Rogue Heroes. He wrote A Spy Among Friends.
I think so. Well, yeah.
Which was about the Philby really incredible story about the Cambridge Five.
And Ken Philby and all that. Yeah.
If any of that interests anybody, just please read into it, because it's such an incredible part of our history. And Operation Mincemeat, which is weirdly a musical now.
Yes, that's right. But of course, there's also a film with what's his face? I forget his name.
Matthew, the person who was Mr. Darcy in Pride and Prejudice.
That's
in
the one.
In
that's
the
one.
remake,
yes,
but
the
not
famous
Colin.
One. Yes.
Yeah. But it's just incredible that it's such a key part of our history that is often just not spoken about because people couldn't or just didn't want to. But it's so important, and I'm so glad that this LARP exists. That I hope they run it again so that I can get to go. But yeah, I
think it will definitely happen again, from what I'm hearing. But also, it's that. It has a momentum all of itself. It was so rewarding for the game runners. So rewarding. So deeply affecting for the players.
It sounds like everybody who was just deeply passionate.
It wasn't just a LARP that everybody had fun at. It was a life-changing experience. And you cannot not run that again. It will happen.
Yeah.
And watch this space, because they have created something so incredibly special and so incredibly perfect, and I'm very much prone to hyperbole, and I will sort of scream to the houses about how great this is and this is and this is, but to put it into context, I would compare it to, I'm of an age where I've seen a lot of different versions of Lord of the Rings. But when Peter Jackson's version turned up, you went, thank God. Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
It's good. It feels right. It looks right. It smells right. It's right. This is a LARP where the same sort of click is happening. It feels so right, and the layers and detail and experience of that crew, of being a very experienced set of LARPers who created a very detailed and thoughtful and clever and caring. You know, the fact that they put aside the cottage, that they put into all the work that they did around the fact that they knew that people would be coming to this with trauma, specifically to address that trauma, and they built that into the plan. This is dad LARP stuff. This is absolutely dad LARP stuff. The dad LARPs and mums ran this, and it's a joy to behold. And I'm so glad it exists in the world, and I want it to go on forever. I would happily work on it. I would happily franchise it. I would want it everywhere. It's just so clever. So clever.
Thank you so much for coming and talking to me about it. I what a way to start. I mean, this is 2025, so thank you so much.
2025, baby. War's nearly over. War's nearly over. The Nazis are definitely on the back foot now. You'll see.
Well, yeah, you never know. Maybe it'll all be over by Christmas.
Well, that's it. Absolutely.
But yeah, thank you again, and thank you for coming on the stream and talking about it. It's just amazing.
I know. I just wish I could show everybody all the documentation photos, but there will be photos coming out. We've seen Oliver Facey's photos come out, and they are
oh my god,
amazing.
Facey.
Oh my goodness, and Roy's Small Pages photos as well, which he did in the period photography. And they are absolutely amazing, and I'm sure a lot of them will be released to the public once promotional stuff gets underway, and they will blow people's mind. That is just the most stunning event.
Nice. Have you got any LARPs planned for 2025 already?
Yeah, I'm going to go. I've got to go for kids LARPs. So my key thing is the kids. So we're going back to Empire. Esme has plans to start a bakery in the Brass Coast. So we're doing a Brass Coast bakery. And we're going to be doing hot cheesy rolls and things like that.
Ooh,
and garlic and you name it. It's going to be fire baked bread. And then I'm trying to get onto the crew with Denomi, because that's an event I've heard a lot of good things about, and I've heard I put it this way, I like everybody I've spoken to who's recommended it, and they all seem like good eggs. So
and what is Denomi?
Denomi is it's a Saxon stroke Celtish LARP based down in the southwest. It's a long drive away for us, but the concept of it, I think, is around basically the pre-Christian pagan arena where there are the likes of supernatural and so on, but it's sort of light magic. So it's it's less kind of Dungeons and Dragons and more kind of paganistic ritual. There's some really fascinating monsters and stuff that they pull into it, like the Wicker Man and stuff like that. So there's a really deep sort of English stuff. So I think that's going to be a really good one to take the kids to. Finding LARPs where the kids are allowed to combat is hard, because they are quite restrictive, and as you know, my kids like to fight. So
they do. Most terrifying military unit.
The Ewoks will plunder and murder everybody they can. But we've come through a period, and now Esme's 17 and she's looking at next steps and stuff. So it's 12, 15 and 17 is a difficult spread to get everybody what they want. It really is. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, thank you again. Can't wait to see you at Empire.
Absolutely.
And we'll do a brief little shout out. So if you want to have a look at SOE Resistance, it is opentheboxproductions.co.uk. I'll pop it in the Facebook post and the description of this episode. There is also a Facebook group if you wanted to go and give them a little nudge. Any interaction will just encourage them to carry on running the LARP, so it would be very much appreciated. And thank you so much to all of our Patreons. You guys have helped get us through the year and carry on hosting the podcast, so thank you so much. And in particular, thank you so much to Mark Sinker, who is our newest Patreon. He joined just in December, so thank you so much to you, Mark. And thank you to the rest of you. You're just all incredible. And you help keep this little podcast alive. And thanks again to you, Chris, for coming on.
Absolute pleasure.
How was it? Did you enjoy it?
Yeah, no, it was good fun. It was good fun. Yeah, I mean, as you know, offloading about a LARP is cathartic in itself, and it's lovely to share it. And it's I feel very privileged to be a hype man for SOE because it's a very special thing.
Yeah. Well, I hope they run it again, and we'll see you on the next episode, guys. Bye bye.